boy, there's a lot of good games on this weekend, isn't there, partner?
Indeed there is. And get excited, everybody, because today on the Timeout, we'll be previewing all Week 6 games from the top 25 teams in the college football season. I'm Rob Slevon.
And I'm Seth Gardner. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
I'm the highest in the room. Hope I make it out of here. She saw my eyes.
Alright, so we're going to start this episode off by showing the top 25 rankings. And there was quite a bit of movement, especially in the top 10, as we look at the rankings here right now. First off, Alabama takes over that number 1 spot as Clemson barely snuck out a win against North Carolina last week.
Yeah, Alabama claims number 1. Clemson struggled with North Carolina last week. That was a very close game. Mark Brown really doing seems to be a good job over there with the Tar Heels, leading them to the right track. Georgia stayed flaccid on the same level, and OSU also moving up to the number 4 spot there. I think coming off that Nebraska win, they looked very impressive last week.
They did indeed.
Yes.
That first half for Ohio State, a lot of people thought that was going to be a big test going up against Nebraska, and they kind of just blew Nebraska out of the water. And a lot of reasons to have Ohio State jumping over LSU.
Yeah.
But I'm the kind of guy who I don't think if a team had a bye week, I don't think they should be justified moving up or down. LSU really had nothing to do with their ranking moving down. I guess a lot of people, I guess you could say Ohio State is a better team than LSU, but it wasn't really LSU's fault they moved down.
Well, I'll make a statement there because LSU, the week before their bye week, struggled against Vandy there, especially on defense. So I think they are deserving of moving down a place. I think Ohio State definitely deserves to be in the top 4 at this point. I think they deserve to be at that 1 or 2 spot personally. But
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how these teams shift around going forward into the season.
Okay, Ohio State, key to remember, they did get more top place votes than Georgia, who is a rank above them. I just want to go back to Clemson real fast. A lot of people were talking about how Clemson was kind of this unstoppable team coming into the season. And last week against North Carolina, man, I was not expecting that to be a close game. But I'm going to be honest, I was just watching, I don't remember exactly what game I was watching, but they showed a game break of where the game was tied at 14 at halftime, and I said, man, I really got to tune into this game. And that was such a good game. Kind of disappointed that North Carolina couldn't pull it out. But, Clemson kind of looks a lot weaker after that one. Trevor Lawrence really struggled in that game big against a team they shouldn't have struggled against, and they have a lot of bad teams in the schedule coming up, so they really don't have that much opportunity to get back up to number 1.
Yeah, this is a win in the W column, but definitely not in the committee's eyes. I think that for Clemson moving forward to the end of the season, if we see a lot of undefeated teams around the spectrum, I think they might have some trouble getting into the playoff even after this close victory here because the ACC is not looking too strong this year. So this will be interesting to see how this close win against North Carolina plays out later in the season. So
there's
look for
a
that.
lot of not very good teams in the ACC, but there's also a lot of good teams behind them in Georgia, OSU, and LSU who have all looked very good this season. And if Clemson just has another slip up, man, they could be out of that top 4 in a hurry.
Well, I'm not even saying if they have another slip up. I think the way they are now with undefeated teams outside of that, even in one-loss team in the SEC, I think they could get over Clemson.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's talk about, let's see here.
Notre Dame moving up
Yes.
to that number 9 spot there after their win against Virginia. They really look solid in that game, especially on offense. Were able to move the ball down the field. Got it done on defense when they needed to.
That was a good game. Virginia put up a good fight until the second half where Notre Dame started to pull out a little bit. But I think the main reason they jumped Florida was that Florida only beat Towson by 38 last week.
Yeah.
It was a shutout. It was 38-0. But I really think Florida could have put the hammer down. They could have showed a little bit more offensive play in that game that they really didn't show, and that's why I think the committee moved them below Notre Dame, which I think is a fair statement for Florida.
Yeah, Florida's definitely got a test this week. We'll talk about that later, as many of you may already know.
Let's talk about UCF. They moved back up 4 spots after their win, walloping UConn last week. They're almost back to where they were before they lost that first game in over 3 years to Pitt a couple of weeks ago. little bit surprising there that they moved up 4 spots, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of shocked. Maybe it's because the committee gave them a little bit, or the AP gave them a little bit more leeway because they haven't lost in so long there. So maybe that's part of it. It'll be interesting to see this week, as we know they go on the road to play Cincinnati, so that'll be a tough matchup there.
Yes, indeed. And then
also, I want to talk about real quick Washington moving up 2 places because I think this is interesting. We're going to see a tight race in the Pac-12 between Oregon and Washington. I think these 2 teams, they still have a chance in the playoff. I may sound crazy as of right now, but if those top teams have some losses later in the season, you could see Washington or Oregon maybe get back up there. It's a long shot, but they could still have an opportunity there.
Okay. A couple of non-ranked teams from last week moving in. Of course, Oklahoma State after beating Kansas State, who was ranked 24 last week. We have Arizona State, who's back in the top 25 after they won last week. Wake Forest is back in the top 25. SMU back in the top 25. It's been a while since we've seen SMU up there, but they've always been a strong team.
Yes,
Let's talk about them a little bit.
SMU indeed has. I want to talk about Wake Forest for a second.
Okay.
A team we haven't really seen, a Power 5 team that maybe, in my eyes, one of the most irrelevant teams. No offense, but we haven't really seen them in the top 25 for maybe 10 plus years.
Yeah.
A team kind of like Cal, who came in earlier this year, who actually lost last week. But Wake Forest has looked pretty impressive this year. I want to see if they can hold that spot, though, because I don't think the ACC, again, is that strong. So if they can do some damage against Clemson, they could hold that spot. And I want to see that game, Clemson-Wake Forest. I think that's the best ACC game of the year. There.
And then you mentioned Cal in there, and Cal was ranked 15 last week, and they moved down all the way out of the top 25 after losing by a touchdown to Arizona State. That's really surprising to me because Arizona State coming into that game was a good team, and Cal really didn't have any leeway. They just got dropped out after 1 loss, which kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah. Going back to SMU, though, their most best win this year is against TCU, a team that's done pretty well this year. But I think SMU may be the new UCF we see this year. Another outside of the Power 5, maybe able to stay undefeated throughout the year. Maybe get into one of those New York Six Bowls. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and then capping it off, first time I've ever remembered a co-ranking as number 25 is shared by Texas A&M and Michigan State.
Yeah, so these 2 teams.
So it's really a top 26 instead of a top 25.
Yeah, so these 2 teams tied in votes, which I don't know if you heard me last week, but I wasn't a big fan of Texas A&M, and I think I proved my case last week too because they struggled with an Arkansas team who hasn't really done much this season.
Yeah, that was a good game.
So I think
not
that,
for the right reasons for Texas A&M.
Yeah,
fans.
I don't think Texas A&M will hold their spot here for a while, but for MSU coming off a win against Indiana, and this week, as we know, they play Ohio State, so they have a huge opportunity there, but I don't think they'll hold their spot there either.
In the Horseshoe, that's kind of a tough game to play. All right, let's jump up to the games for this week. As starting off on Friday, October the 4th, we have number 18 UCF traveling to Cincinnati. This game is at 8 p.m. on ESPN. UCF is 3.5-point favorites in this one.
Yeah, UCF coming off that Pitt loss 2 weeks ago, they were able to get things done against UConn last week, I believe, and Cincinnati. Their biggest loss this season has been to Ohio State. But the story here is whoever wins this game, I think, is going to run the American Conference here. Both these teams have a huge opportunity. Cincinnati playing at home. They have a little bit of an advantage there in my eyes. I'm going to take the Bearcats at home. I think they win in a close matchup here.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think UCF still has kind of that momentum. They built it back after beating UConn last week. And Cincinnati, of course, their only loss of the season coming to Ohio State. But I do think UCF gets this done on the road. They've been a hard team to play against in the past, and I think that'll show up again in this game today.
And why don't we give a shout-out to Ryan Royer, who plays for the Bearcats, actually attended our high school, so that's a big shout-out there.
Yeah. All right, moving on now, we have Utah State traveling to LSU. This game is Saturday at 12 p.m. on SEC Network. LSU is favored by 27 points in this one after coming off a bye week last week.
Yeah, so this one will be interesting for LSU. I think they need to shape up on the defensive side of things, especially that they're going to be moving into conference play very soon here. They're going to be playing teams like Alabama, who can put a lot of points on the board there. So they got to shape up that defense. I think they'll do a better job this week, but I don't think they cover the spread. I think this is a closer game, maybe a 3-touchdown game here.
Okay.
I'll take LSU.
I'm going to take LSU as well. Joe Burrow, has looked very good so far this season.
Yeah, in the Heisman race this year. So
yeah, and after coming off that big win to Texas, I know it was a couple weeks ago, but man, did he look impressive in that win against Texas. I'm going to take LSU as well. I think they cover the spread.
Okay. Then moving on here, we'll go to Oklahoma and Kansas. This one is at Kansas. It's at 12 o'clock Eastern time, and Oklahoma definitely the favorite here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no doubt Oklahoma wins this one big. Oklahoma coming off a huge win to Texas Tech last week, 55-16, I believe it was. You actually had that in one of your good games of the time segment, and that really wasn't close at all.
Yeah, that was a failure on my part. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
definitely. Oklahoma just kind of ran right over Texas Tech. And meanwhile, Kansas has kind of looked up and down so far this year. They beat Boston College, but they've also lost big to TCU and a close one to West Virginia. So Kansas, you could either see one or the other teams in this one. You could see a good team or a bad team.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Oklahoma, and I don't think I think they will cover that 32-point spread.
Yeah, so last week against Texas Tech, I was very impressed to see not only Oklahoma's power offense with Jalen Hurts, but also their defense step up a little bit, because in past years, even those weak teams, they've been going in shootouts against. So it was good to see them only let up 16 points against Texas Tech. And then for Kansas, kind of a rebuilding program. I think they might make a push to get in a bowl this year, so that's a positive for them. But I don't think they get it done here. I think Oklahoma wins this one big. I think they're going to win by 30-plus here.
Okay, all right.
And then moving on, we have Kent State at Wisconsin. This game is at 12 o'clock Eastern on ESPNU, and Wisconsin is a 35-point favorite here. So let's talk about this one.
Yeah, Group of 5 team going up against a Big Ten team. You really don't see this after the first 4 weeks, but Wisconsin gets a little bit of a layoff this week. We thought they were going to get a little bit of a layoff last week against Northwestern, but that game ended up being close. Wisconsin, who dominated against Michigan a couple weeks ago, kind of let off the gas a little bit, had to kind of squeak out a close game against Northwestern that they ended up winning by 9 points. They were favored definitely by more than 9 points. I don't remember what the line in that game was. But, Wisconsin, this has got to be a statement week. They're supposed to kill Kent State. As you said, the spread is big. Kent State coming into this game, not much momentum. Of course, a Group of 5 team.
Yeah.
So they don't really see big competition over the season. But I think Wisconsin will take this. I don't think they cover the spread. I think Wisconsin, I think they'll struggle a little bit early on, but they'll definitely pull this game out after a while.
I'm going to disagree with you here. I think that Wisconsin has no problem with the Golden Flashes. I think Jonathan Taylor gets himself on the board here a lot. I think he proves a case for the Heisman this week. I think that Wisconsin wins big. I think they do cover the spread this week.
The only thing for me, real quick, staying in this game, is for Wisconsin. A lot of times you see Group of 5 teams versus Power 5 teams. You see the first quarter kind of stay a little bit even. I think we'll see this definitely in this game with Wisconsin, especially coming off a close game last week.
Cough, cough. Ohio State. Miami.
All right, moving up.
That wasn't close.
Moving on to the next game. We have Purdue traveling to number 12, Penn State. This game is at 12 p.m. on ESPN. Penn State is 28.5-point favorites in this game. Purdue, who had a big statement win against Ohio State last year, but they're already 1-3 on the season.
Yeah, Penn State looked very impressive against Maryland at Maryland last week. Really shut them down on all sides of it. 49-0 there. Really, Penn State this year, I think they have one of Franklin's best teams in a while. So I think he gets it done here. I think he makes a statement for a Big Ten East championship here and a push. Ohio State might have some trouble against these Nittany Lions this year. And Purdue, another team that is coming off a loss this past week to Minnesota. Excuse me.
Yes.
Purdue is kind of off and on. You never know what you're going to get out of Purdue. I think Nittany Lions this week maybe get Purdue on a little bit of a good side of things. I think this is a closer one than people expect. I think the Nittany Lions win by 2 touchdowns here.
Okay. I'm going to take the Nittany Lions big in this one. Purdue's only win so far this season was against Vanderbilt. They got killed by TCU last week, or by 2 weeks ago. Last week they played Minnesota, and that was kind of a close game. It opened up a little bit, but got close as the game went on. But I think Purdue had a little bit too much confidence coming into this year. They scheduled harder opponents at the beginning of the year, and it hasn't really went well for them. But traveling to Penn State this week, I think as well they have a very good team. Penn State does. Probably their best team since Saquon Barkley left for the draft. Beating Maryland 59-0 last week. That was a big statement win for them because Maryland looked good in the first 2 weeks of the season. But ever since their offense has cooled off, of course getting shut out last week. But we're not talking about Maryland. We're talking about Penn State. Penn State wins this big, covers the spread.
Okay.
Moving on, we have a very good game next. This one's at 12 p.m. on Fox. We have number 14 Iowa traveling to the Big House. Number 19 Michigan. Michigan favored by 3.5 points to win this one. Man, this will be a good game.
Yeah, I think this will be a good game. I want to see if Michigan shows up this week because they looked pretty impressive against Rutgers last week. But who doesn't look impressive against Rutgers? The week before that, we all know, blowout against Wisconsin. This is another Wisconsin-like team that they're playing here, so this will be a statement if they can win this game. I think Jim Harbaugh, this is a very important game for him to get back on track. If they win this game, they could still be in the hunt for a Big Ten title.
Definitely.
These type of games at home are the ones that Michigan has to win. I think for Iowa, they're playing with nothing to lose. I think Michigan is playing with everything to lose here.
Yeah, Iowa 4-0 in the season. Of course, ranked number 14, higher than Michigan. But Michigan, man, this helps them a lot that they're at home this week, especially coming off that win against Rutgers, as you said, a couple weeks ago, losing to Wisconsin, big on the road. But I think definitely their defense is going to have to show up today. They're going to have to dominate that line of scrimmage. I think whichever team, when Iowa has the ball on offense, whichever team dominates that line of scrimmage, whether it's Michigan pushing that line back or the Iowa line pushing forward, that will determine who wins this game. But I think Iowa wins this game on the road in Michigan.
Yeah, I'll take Iowa, but they're an interesting team because we haven't really seen them play anybody this year, but they're ranked at that 14 spot. So I want to see if they can hold it this year. In past years when they've been ranked this high, they kind of fall down into the 20s, mid-20s area. But I want to see if they can make a statement for a playoff push this year.
Okay.
That'll be big for Iowa.
All right, do the next one, Seth.
All right. Technical difficulties. Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. And I called this one. I said that Oklahoma State was going to be in the rankings last week. I just want to let everybody know that real quick. Oklahoma State travels to Texas Tech this week. This one is at 12 o'clock Eastern Time on FS1, and Oklahoma State is a 10-point favorite.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State, I think that 21 is a little bit of an understatement for them. I definitely think they're a top 15 team. Of course, their only loss being a 6-point loss at Texas a couple of weeks ago. They had a statement win against Kansas State this week, which not a lot of people got to see because it wasn't nationally televised. It was only an ESPN subscriber game. But going over to Texas Tech a little bit, they lost big to Oklahoma last week. That was a chance to get a statement game, and they completely laid a goose egg in Oklahoma last week. I think Oklahoma State will definitely take this game. I think it'll be more than a 10-point win for Oklahoma State, who's looked very impressive so far this season.
Yeah, I agree with you here. I think Oklahoma State is going to pile it on the Red Raiders here. I think they win big. 3 touchdowns, I'll take them.
Okay. All right, we got a big one up next.
Yeah, Auburn, number 7 Auburn at number 10 Florida. Boy, this is a nice SEC matchup. This one is at 3:30 Eastern Time on CBS, and Auburn is a 2.5-point favorite here. So let's talk about this one.
These are two teams coming into the season after their first couple weeks that looked like they were going to struggle a lot. But two teams that have kept winning. They're both undefeated, both at 5-0. Auburn with Bo Nix and Florida on their backup quarterback now.
Yeah.
This could be a good game to watch. Of course, it is nationally televised, an SEC game. One of the 3 games at 3:30 that show ranked opponents in this game. Just one ranked opponent. And this could be a very good game. I think Auburn will open it up against Florida's defense this week on the road. This is a chance for Bo Nix to get another statement game. This is where the experience against those ranked teams comes in that he got earlier in the season against Texas A&M and Oregon. I think both those games will help him lead his team past Florida this week, and I think they win this by at least a touchdown.
Yeah, I expect this to be a really good game. Low scoring, of course. We know both defenses are very good here. I think that, honestly, the top three defenses, both teams have it here. But on the offensive side of things, both teams kind of struggling early on this year. Florida looked not that impressive on the offense last week, and Auburn has kind of struggled all year, although they've been able to get grinded out wins at the end of the game. Bo Nix has improved, though, which is good signs for Auburn. If he can
looks
improve,
comfortable back there.
Yes, he does. He's improving every week, and I think this might be the week that he has a breakout game. So I'm going to look for Auburn to take this game by 7 points.
Okay. Quickly on Florida, they did barely beat Miami week 1 of the season. Their offense has not gotten much better than that, only putting up 38 points to a team I've personally never heard of before in Towson last week.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it can get much worse for Florida, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, let's talk one more thing about this game is that both these teams really have a good chance to get in the playoffs this year and push against Alabama, who's been that favorite all year. But both these teams, this is a very important game for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I say, it doesn't matter as much about how the wins look on the scoreboard as long as you get the wins. As both these teams undefeated, of course, still have a chance to push for a top 4 spot.
Yep.
All right, moving on, we have Bowling Green visiting number 9 Notre Dame, coming off that big statement win against Virginia last week after losing to Georgia the week before. This game is at 3:30 on NBC. Notre Dame is 45.5-point favorites. Yes, you are hearing me right. 45.5-point favorites in this one.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame last week proved that they still belong in the top 10, and they still can make a push for the college football playoff. I think Bowling Green really has no chance here. I'm going to take Notre Dame. Big.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think Notre Dame wins this game huge. Bowling Green has kind of struggled a lot against Power 5 teams in the past, and they already have a losing record on the year. I think Notre Dame wins this big with that big-time offense.
I was impressed with Ian Book's play last week.
Yeah.
He looked very impressive, and he also looked impressive in that Georgia game, although they weren't able to get it done. But look for Notre Dame to win this one.
I think Notre Dame will definitely win this one. Putting up 35 points against Virginia last week was definitely a good look for them.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We have number 11 Texas visiting West Virginia. This game is on ABC at 3:30. Texas is 10-point favorites to win this game.
Yeah, even though West Virginia is not ranked here, I still expect this to be a very good game. West Virginia, a team who their only loss this season is against I believe Missouri. They lost to Missouri. That was kind of a tough game for them on offense, but I look for them to make a push this game. I think this will be a decent game here. Texas, a team who we know they beat Oklahoma State 2 weeks ago, and I believe they had a bye last week. Texas.
Yes, they did.
Yes.
They had a bye last week.
Yes. So Texas, I look for them to win this game, but I think West Virginia is going to make it interesting here. But I'll take the spread of 10 points. I'll take Texas.
I think Texas wins this game by way more than 10 points. West Virginia has struggled a lot this year. They only beat James Madison by 1 touchdown. They lost to Missouri, of course. They've had a lot of close games. They only beat Kansas by 5, who is 2-3 on the year. Meanwhile, Texas has played pretty well so far this year. They got Oklahoma State 2 weeks ago, who I think definitely was a ranked team going into that game. Even though they might not have been ranked, they might have been an unranked team going into that game. They were definitely a very good team. And they barely lost to LSU, of course, a couple weeks earlier with Burrow on a career week. But I think Texas will pull this one out. I think it'll be definitely like a 4-touchdown win for Texas, as West Virginia's kind of been beaten up a lot in these close games so far this year against Group of 5 teams.
Yeah, these conference games are definitely very important for Texas now, especially after their loss to LSU, because they have to prove that they can pile it on against these weaker opponents. and compete for that college football playoff spot. They're competing right now against Oklahoma. It's really these two teams kind of fighting in the Big 12. So if they're able to beat Oklahoma later down the road, then puts them in pretty good shape.
Yep.
Next up, we have Georgia visiting the Volunteers of Tennessee. This game is at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN, and Georgia is a whopping 24.5-point favorite here.
Yeah,
So,
I think that spread is greatly justified. Georgia has played very well this year. Of course, I don't believe they played last week. 2 weeks ago, though, they came off a big statement win against Notre Dame, and Tennessee has really struggled this year, losing by 8 to Georgia State. They lost to BYU the following week, and then got killed by Florida a couple of weeks ago. Their only win against Chattanooga, which was a 45-0 win, which was kind of a relief for Tennessee fans who really needed that win. And if they lost that game, man, the whole university would have gone crazy. But Tennessee has struggled a lot this year. Georgia has not. They have a really strong team again, and I think Georgia will win this game, definitely covering the 24.5-point spread. I think it'll be way more than a 24.5-point game.
yeah, I'm with you there. I think Georgia definitely gets this one done. Tennessee, kind of a program that's really struggled for a while, these past 5 years at least. Not really been able to sneak in the top 25 in a while. They definitely looked very shaky this year. Some bad losses. If they can still make a push for a bowl this year, I think that's a win for the Volunteers. But I don't think they have a chance against Georgia, who showed that they belonged in that that number 3 spot, especially after beating Notre Dame 2 weeks ago.
Yep. All right, we're going to get to the nightcap of these games in just a sec, but first, stay tuned for a quick announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying this video so far, please feel free to follow our Instagram and Twitter accounts. That's at the Timeout YT. We would also greatly appreciate it if you hit the subscribe and like button, hit that notification bell to find out when we upload, and comment down below to join the conversation. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the video.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to jump right into things. Right now we have Sparty from Michigan State visiting Ohio State. This is going to be an exceptional game, although I think that Ohio State pulls away at the end. This game is at 7:30 Eastern Time, and Ohio State is the 20-point favorite here. What are your thoughts on this one? A Sparty team who's spoiled the Buckeyes' plans before.
Yes, they have, but I definitely don't think this is the year they'll do it.
No.
They're co-ranked 25. Technically, they could be 25 or they could be unranked team, as they got the same amount of votes as Texas A&M, who has also been playing pretty poorly. But Michigan State coming off a close win against Indiana, who definitely didn't give Ohio State any trouble. At home, Indiana was in that game. Michigan State's only loss was against Arizona State, a 10-7 loss. They've struggled a lot this year as Michigan State, and I think coming into the shoe a night game that they definitely won't be ready for. And talking about Ohio State, after the first 4 weeks of the season, a lot of people were kind of like, yeah, they crushed all those opponents, they look good, but they're all Group of 5 teams, despite Indiana being a Big Ten team, but they haven't really given any teams trouble so far this year that have been good in the Big Ten. But last week, coming off a game against a much improved Nebraska team from last season that gave Ohio State trouble. This year, they gave Ohio State almost no trouble. Ohio State jumped out to a 38-0 lead going into halftime. A lot of people didn't see that coming from Ohio State, as Justin Fields had a big first half. And I think Ohio State wins this game big. I think they cover that 20-point spread at home.
Yeah, I want to see Justin Fields perform again in this game. Of course, we know last week against Nebraska, he looked very impressive there. But a Michigan State team whose offense has not really done much this whole entire season so far. I don't think that they will put enough points on the board to beat the Buckeyes. I think the Buckeyes run away with this thing, especially in the fourth quarter like they did against Nebraska. I think this one may be close for the first half, but I think the Buckeyes run away with it. I'll take the spread.
Yeah, real quick thing. A team that really wants to have a good chance to beat the Buckeyes, you really need a good defense to stop Justin Fields, but you also need a really good offense. A lot of people have underestimated that defense outside of Chase Young, who has had a good year. But you also got Tuff Borland at middle linebacker, who's a really good surveyor in the middle of the field, and their corners like Jeffrey Okudah. The number ones in Ohio State on offense and defense have been star players for them. You really need a very balanced offensive and defensive attack to beat the Buckeyes. And I think Michigan State's offense has just struggled so much this year that they're not going to put up nearly enough points to overpower Ohio State's offense.
Yeah, especially against Arizona State, they weren't able to put any points until the last minute of that game. Excuse me. So I don't think that they really have a chance to work on offense here against the Buckeyes. Buckeyes win this one.
And Michigan State's kicker has also struggled so far this season
as
well. He barely squeaked in a 44-yard field goal last week against Indiana.
Yeah, and we all know what happened against Arizona State.
Yeah, and he's missed one in many of the games so far this year for Michigan State. All right, moving on, we have kind of a lower matchup. Not a lot of people will be tuning into this one, but it will be a good one. On ESPNU at 7:30, we have Tulsa visiting number 24 Southern Methodist University, or SMU. SMU favored by 13 points to win this one.
Yeah, SMU, a team that squeaked into the top 25. I don't remember the last time I've seen SMU up here. But, of course, last week against USF on the road, they won 48-21. And then earlier in the season, they got it done against a TCU team who high-powered offense. Their offense, man. I tell you what, SMU ain't a team to play around with. I think they're the next UCF this year. Might have a push to get in the New Year's Six Bowls later down the road. But big talk is Shane Boucher here. He really looks impressive these first 5 games, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely. And not really surprising me that much to see SMU back in the top 25 again. Of course, they've had a lot of big draft guys come out of there. Of course, Emmanuel Sanders and Cortland Sutton, both from the Denver Broncos, have come out of SMU. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't really watched much SMU football in the past, but I think they'll definitely cover the spread in this one. Tulsa being 2-2 and have kind of struggled so far this year as Tulsa. I think SMU will definitely win this game and cover the spread.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Moving on to our next game.
All right, we're going to move on. We have Cal visiting number 13, Oregon. This game is at 8 p.m. on Fox. Oregon is 18-point favorites in this one against the Cal team coming off their first loss of the year last week against Arizona State. They lost only by 7 points, and they dropped all the way out of the top 25.
Yeah, disappointing loss for Cal. Oregon looked impressive last week and looks impressive the past couple weeks, I will say. Coming off after that loss against Auburn, they were able to shape things up. I think this Oregon team still has a run for the playoffs, and this is a game to prove that statement. Cal, a team that's looking to get back into things a little bit in the Pac-12, but I don't think they do it here. I think that Oregon covers the spread, takes this game, and I think they prove that they're worthy of a championship in the Pac-12.
Definitely. I think Cal really has nothing to lose going into Oregon playing this game. It's a night game, prime time. That crowd for Oregon is going to be fired up for this game. Cal, personally, I think if Oregon wins this game, this will look good on their resume because Cal, even though they're unranked, I think they should be ranked. I think the committee is a little bit not enough generous with Cal as they dropped them down more than 10 spots just after a 7-point loss last week to Arizona State, who did beat Michigan State as well earlier this year.
This is a Cal team who I honestly think is better than a Texas A&M out of the SEC. I think there might be a little bit of bias going on there with the SEC over the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Honestly, this year you got a lot of Pac-12 teams roaming around that 20 to 15 spot around there. This is a very competitive conference this year. There's a lot of decent teams around here. We don't really have an elite team, but we have a lot of really good teams.
Yeah, a lot of really good teams in the Pac-12, and it really doesn't help many people's schedules to have these decent teams for the Pac-12 teams at least.
Yeah. Trying
to make a push for the playoff, you really need that big elite team in your conference to knock off. And the Pac-12 really doesn't have it. But game picks here. Who are you taking?
I'm going to take Oregon here. I think they cover the spread. Night game at home, I think they're hyped up, ready to go. I think Cal kind of continues that negative momentum here. I don't think they get it done.
I'm going to take Oregon as well, but I don't think they cover the spread in this one. The spread's 18. I think they could win this by 2 touchdowns or maybe even less. Cal's looked impressive so far this year, and only losing by 1 touchdown to Arizona State. It's definitely not time to push the panic button yet for Cal fans.
All right, so as we wrap up the night, we move on to number 15, Washington at Stanford. This game is at 10:30 Eastern Time on ESPN, and Washington is a 15.5-point favorite.
Yes, they are. And Washington coming off that big statement win against USC last week at home. I personally picked USC to win this game. I think you did as well.
Yes, I did.
Last week, Washington definitely had a big statement game. And meanwhile, Stanford has lost quite a bit of games so far this year, as they right now are 2-3 on the year. They have lost all 3 of their games to some pretty good teams, though. They lost to, they lost to Oregon earlier in the year. They lost to UCF and they lost to USC. But I think the big defining factor for Stanford this week could be that they only beat Oregon State last week by 3 points, and that is what leads me to believe that the Washington Cougars will lead themselves by Stanford covering the spread in this game.
You said the Cougars? I'm pretty sure that's Washington State, but it's fine.
Huskies.
All right,
Washington Huskies.
Yeah, so this is a Stanford team who we don't really know their mojo this year. They've kind of been up and down so far this season. But I think they look to get back on track this game. I think it's closer than people expect. I think Washington wins this one close by a touchdown. I think this is a game to tune into. I think this is going to be a good one here. But I'll take Washington.
And one final note, Stanford is at home, and they have played very well so far this year at home. I think that could be the one defining factor in this game that could keep this game close.
Yeah. And finally, our last game of the night is Boise State Broncos, not the Denver Broncos, taking on UNLV. This one's at 10:30 Eastern Time on the CBS Sports Network, and BSU is a 23-point favorite.
Yeah, Boise State, of course, that big statement win against Florida State earlier this year. But UNLV has struggled a lot. They lost to Northwestern by 16 points a couple of weeks ago. They got killed by Wyoming the week before their bye. I believe, last week they played. But, UNLV has not really been an impressive team in the past. I really don't think they are this week either. Boise State coming off a close win against Air Force, and they only beat Marshall by 7 points a couple of weeks ago. So Boise State has been kind of an up-and-down team. They had to come back against Florida State, who has really struggled so far this year with Hornibrook transferring from Wisconsin. But I think Boise State will win this game. They are on the road. They're not playing at the Blue Field, but I think they'll win this game. I think they'll cover the spread as well, which is 23 points.
Yeah, this is a Boise State team that's trying to get back in that spot where they used to be in the BCS, kind of hanging around. Used to be kind of the old UCF around there, hanging in the top 20 area, able to upset a lot of teams in some bowl games. I think they really want to get back into a near 6 bowl this year. That'd be cool to see. Boise State hanging around against Air Force last week, able to get it done. And they're kind of hanging with their win against Florida State, their most impressive win so far this year against a Power 5 team. But I think they definitely get it done this week. I think they cover the spread and win this one on the road.
All right. And, of course, same as we did last week, we're going to pick one game from each time frame that we think would be the best game. So, Friday.
Let's also wrap it up with the Heisman Watch. We're going to talk about that for a
we'll talk about the Heisman Watch as well. But first off, let's go through each time frame. Of course, there's only one game on Friday, but there's a lot of games Saturday at noon. I think the game to watch is going to be a Big Ten matchup between Iowa and Michigan, a physical Iowa team and a Michigan team that's trying to get back on track after losing to Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago after coming off a big win against Rutgers, though, last week. This will be definitely a big game to watch. 12 p.m. on Fox. Michigan is 3.5-point favorites at home against Iowa in this game.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I'm going to be tuning into this game personally, and I think you should too, to look for Michigan and see if they can bounce back after an early loss to Wisconsin.
All right, going on to the 3:30 time frame. My game to watch is number 7 Auburn at number 10 Florida. Both these teams are undefeated. I think you can agree with me as well.
Are you reading my list or something? Because that's the game I had in mind too.
This game is 3:30 on CBS. Auburn is 2.5-point favorites. Two offenses that have struggled so far this year, and two defenses that have looked pretty good as well. But I think this is my game to watch for this time frame, and you would agree as well.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you there. And then I think the game of the night is Michigan State traveling to Ohio State. Even though it's a 20-point spread for the Buckeyes here, I think this will be a good one in the first half. I think this is going to be a better game than Nebraska. I think Michigan State's defense is more impressive than Nebraska. I think they may hang in for a while with their rattling around their defense, but I don't think their offense can keep up. But Definitely tune into this game, though. Game of the night.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to disagree, but real quick, Ohio State has struggled a lot in night games, and Michigan State has given them some troubles in the shoe in the past couple of years. Of course, we all remember that field goal when the backup quarterback for Michigan State came in a couple years ago.
Feed the beast.
Yeah, feed the beast. Zeke Elliott should have gotten the ball way more of that game. But my game of this time frame is at 8 p.m. on Fox. It is Cal traveling to Oregon. Oregon, who's been a good team this year, and Cal dropping out of the top 25 last week, of course, dropping down more than 10 spots after their loss to Arizona State. I think this, in my mind, is a matchup between two ranked teams. A Pac-12 matchup, that could be a good one. I think this is the game you should watch during this time frame. And then 10:30, I guess we will do it because there's a couple of good games on.
Yeah, sleeper game. I think I'm going to fall asleep to the Washington and Stanford game. I think this one will be a good one. Washington able to hang in there early this season with one loss. Stanford kind of struggling this season, but I look for this to be a bounce-back game.
Yeah, this could be a big game. Stanford's always known for that big crowd, especially in prime time. A little bit surprised to see this game so late, but a 10:30 game on ESPN against number 15
Well, you
Washington.
have to keep in mind it's Pacific time, so.
That's true. They gave a good sweet treat for those guys who stay up late. A lot of guys who like to stay up late for those late games in college football, including myself. Sleeper games, just as you said. I think this is the game to watch. All right, let's go back into the AP Top 25. Of course, last week we did one team that we think will jump big and one team we think will fall out of the rankings. Let's do the same thing. What are you thinking so far this week for the team that could jump up or fall down?
A team that could. Well, I'll start off with my team that can jump down. I think the same team from last week, Texas A&M. I'm kind of hating on the Aggies this year, but I just don't think that they're impressive this week, especially after a close win against Arkansas last week. I don't think the Aggies stick around in the top 25.
Especially based on the fact that they don't even play this week. So so they could definitely get bumped down. My team, I think, could get bumped down. I'm going to stick with the same team I went with last week, and I'm going to say Michigan. Michigan, who has looked kind of unimpressive so far this year. If they lose this game big to Iowa, that could be a big loss for Michigan. Not something they want to avoid is a big loss, but being at home, I don't think it'll be a big loss. But if they don't show the committee that they can play football, they'll be dropped out of there quick.
Yeah, I think a team that can make a statement this week is I'm going to go with Oregon. I think they can make it a statement here against Cal. I think they can maybe get back into the top 10 if they can win big against Cal.
I was thinking the same thing, but a little bit of honorable mention here is Florida. Even though I do not think they're going to beat Auburn, having Auburn on their schedule, and let's say they do win this game, that could be a huge step in the right direction for Florida, who is still undefeated. That a win against Auburn could definitely win the committee's hearts.
Yeah, I think both these teams, if they beat each other, they kind of stay a little bit stale, around the same area. Auburn might be able to move up into the top 4, depending on how things go next week. But we'll see about that. And
yeah, I think those top 6 teams above Auburn, though, are significantly better than them. I think 7 might be just a touch high for Auburn, so it's going to look good for all the teams that have them on their schedule.
Yeah. Why don't we jump into the Heisman Watch?
Heisman Watch so far.
So,
of course, 2 transfer quarterbacks. I want to mention Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields. Of course, Justin Fields
also
coming
Joe
from Georgia.
Burrow, of course.
Joe Burrow, yes, as well. Joe Burrow going to an SEC team. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields coming from SEC teams. Hurts coming from Alabama and Justin Fields coming from Oklahoma. 2 teams fitting into their new offenses very well. Of course, Justin Fields has played significantly very good this season so far. As a dual-threat quarterback, he's been very hard to stop on the pass and on the run. And Jalen Hurts, of course, he's put up huge numbers week in and week out for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think you left out one name there. I think there's 4 quarterbacks that are competing for the Heisman this year. That's really the only position in my mind. Of course, Tua Tagovailoa, I'm going to go with him at number 1, and then number 2, a close second. Both those I could interchange. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts, a former teammate of Tua. And at number 3, I'm going to go with Justin Fields, and I'll take Burrow at 4. Both Fields and Burrow, however, have big opportunities this week with some big games. Burrow, of course, I forget, but
He came off a bye, but
Yeah.
he did have a big game a couple weeks ago against Texas. That was I believe his career high passing yards and passing touchdowns.
Yeah, so I want to see if Fields and Burrow can make the next jump to kind of compete for that 1-2, because right now it's really a 1-2 race with Tua and Hurts, but Fields definitely has an opportunity at home this week against Michigan State.
In my mind, if I was going to rank them, I would have Hurts at number 1, Fields at number 2, and then Burrow at number 3. I think, personally, Tua is a little bit kind of overrated. A lot of people still look at him as the quarterback that took Alabama to victory a couple years ago in the national championship game after Hurts was pulled after the first half. But I think Alabama, they really get it done with their offensive line and their rushing attack. I don't think Tua Tagovailoa has been a prime. I mean, he has been a prime quarterback, but I don't think he's one of the top 5 in passing offense. If I was just to rank the strength of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, let's also talk about Taylor Lawrence for a second, not being in this kind of mix for the quarterback run, where we really saw him in the beginning in the preseason. We saw him in our eyes being the front runner here. But
yeah, definitely. I think
here.
a lot of it has to do with that close game last week against North Carolina, as he kind of got beat up and he didn't really play very well against North Carolina, which was a team that he really needed to go in and dominate against.
I mean, this is a Clemson team that doesn't really need him to play well in order to win. They could win without him, to be honest. They could put in their backup quarterback, in my eyes, and beat anybody in the ACC. But, yeah, Trevor Lawrence kind of struggling, especially turning over the ball this year. That's been a big issue for him to start the season. Kind of getting a lot of pressure so far, which is not a good sign for the Tigers. But, yeah, he still has a shot for the Heisman in my eyes, but it's kind of a long shot at this point.
Yeah, you really don't like to talk about only quarterbacks for the Heisman race, but that's just how it has to be sometimes. All right, we're going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed this video this week, please be sure to subscribe and like the video. And if you want to join the conversation, of course, you can comment below or tweet or DM us on Instagram or Twitter. That is at the Timeout YT. And thanks for tuning in this week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks for